We raise this alarm because from what we see very clearly, Nigeria could crash before the election. Nigeria could crash during that election. Nigeria could crash right after the election. And so it will all be tied to the election and the fact that we decided to proceed to election instead of stopping to solve the problem. I repeat, Nigeria has broken down, and Nigeria will break up violently, except the journey to 2023 election is aborted, except the flight, the electoral flight to 2023 is aborted forthwith. Because we can see already that internal contradictions have jumped out from all the sides. And instead of realizing that this danger is coming upon all, the political merchants from across the length and breadth of Nigeria are carrying on as if all is well. The petroleum products that are not available has grounded the economy. Everybody is stranded everywhere. The airlines are struggling, the individuals are struggling, even the generator, the electricity was not there, and so the generator that could put them to, at least get some sleep at night. Everybody is on the street looking for how to get to the next day. The value of the naira has collapsed on account of the gambles of the government and its central bank. You are not sure of the price of anything anymore. Whatever you are told is what it is. The lecturers are not yet back to work after 8 months of strike. Somebody sits in Abuja and pays half-month salary saying, well, it's no work, no pay. As if the issues being raised are frivolous. Now the teachers are not yet back to work. The pupils are just hanging around, and the politicians are happy to hire them to come to run their campaigns. If we do not stop, it will be that we have chosen to perish. Let that voyage be halted as of immediate, because those internal contradictions that have not turned up, throwing up all kinds of flashpoints, the whole place is like rigged with fuel. These flashpoints are going to ignite the fuel, and then we are back into the fire, the type we saw between 64 and 66. It was only on account of refusing to address the source of the problem, the union dispute. The union that is supposed to be a federation has collapsed. The forceful preservation of the union by the Fulani who hijacked the carcass of the Federation of Nigeria that died in 1966 is not holding. Everybody is looking for exit from the failed Lugadian experiment of 1914, from the failed Federation of Nigeria. And all we could do in response is to drag everybody going to renew the instrument that is behind these failures, this constitution, by going to election. And so this address is directed more at the would-be victims, those who will die in their numbers when we get to that crash. Or tell me, is it that the day after the election assuming that they wobble on to that point. Is it that the day after the election, one of these candidates we see now will be sworn in to defend and uphold that 1999 constitution and all will be well? Or he will now begin to invite us to come to National Assembly that is the product of that constitution, the fraud, to begin to do what? Or is he going to give us electricity with that constitution? Or begin to cure corruption with that constitution that creates and protects corruption? Or is it infrastructure he'll begin to tell us he will do with that constitution still in place? So let us even leave the period before and talk of the period after the election. What will that winner begin to do? And when we come back from there, we get to the period before. How do we get to election on the trajectory we see now? How do we manage the crisis of the kind of election that INEC is planning, in which PVCs have been distributed in the most lopsided manner? All of those who are doing PVC revolution and obedient movement here and there, we've seen their numbers, we've seen them on the streets. But where is the PVC? Who is in control of the materials that will determine the outcome? The same people you want to use the PVC that Fulani printed among themselves between the nephew of your president, who is holding sway in the place. The BVA, only them know the type they will give you. They have the full picture of who is where. They know who they gave the PVC. They know where the BVAs will be deployed. They know the polling units they created and where they are. They are printing the ballot by themselves. Only what they give you will you use. The chief returning officer is one of them. They have a candidate in the fight. And so, if knowing all of this, we refuse to make the appropriate decision of stopping the journey so that we can begin, we can at least avoid the inferno, then it is our choice to get to that crash, which could happen before, during, or after. And even if we get to that point of after, then what? I ask Atiku, then what? Tinubu, under this 1999 constitution, then what? The day after the election, then what? Peter Obi, under this constitution, then what? He says he has a bill to go to do power devolution. We already made a broadcast talking about devolution of power as an illiterate discussion. Devolution presupposes that our sovereignty is now in the hand of that illicit federal government. That's what it means. It means we are now accepting that the federal government owns our sovereignty and will therefore give what it deems fit at its own time to the units they created, the states. How did we come about the states as federating units? I don't know what Abia is. I'm sure you do not know what Rivers is. I'm sure you do not know what... which of you was on the table the day those states were being carved out? Yes, a few political actors may have gone, wanting to create a fiefdom for themselves, and so they say they carried out the state movement, and it was created for them in a federation that was supposed to have gone back to the regional autonomy that was the basis of being one political union. People who have education, people who have exposure are doing the exact opposite of what will cure the problem. By fracturing these 4 regions into 36 states, there are still movement to create more states so that there could be a governor and more senator and sharing of money. But who is taking responsibility for the life of the millions of people who are now caught in the global capital for poverty? Over 120 million people Who is taking responsibility for their welfare? Who is taking responsibility for their security? Because the constitution that create the conditions we're grappling with is being sustained by the political merchants from all those caricatures they call states. And if the people who are whose lives are being ruined are not listening, then we'll come to the conclusion that they truly deserve to perish. If this election is not called off and transition initiated for the sole purpose of addressing the union agreement that has gone bad, the union dispute that has been declared since 2020, if we're not doing that, and we proceed in the hope that one fellow or the other will become president and all will be well from there, then that stupidity, that foolishness ought to be punished by the maximum punishment available, including death. Because those who are making that choice now, for whatever be their reason, if it's ignorance, the Bible already condemned them to perish. If it is dishonesty, the worse. What is the difficulty in dressing back for a moment to say, will this solve this problem? Because if it is not solved, the guaranteed outcome is that the place will go up in smoke, and the human beings who are trapped here are going to be the casualties of it. Of course, when the fire dies down, when the smoke clears, those who are still alive will still have to go back to what the issue is. This constitution, 1999, this unitary constitution, cannot be the basis of any union. Whoever will win that election and say he wants to govern, having sworn to defend and uphold the instrument that enslave others, I'm sorry for you, very sorry for you. Even if you are my twin brother, if I have one bullet left in a rifle and I see an enemy from Senegal or from Mauritania, the ones that have been coming to kill people here, the ones that are boasting all over here because they have one of their own people in government house, if I have one bullet left, I will not expend it on the grandchildren of Uthman Danfodio. I will expend it on my twin brother who is prepared to defend and uphold the 1999 Constitution. I repeat, I will expend it on my twin brother who is prepared to swear to defend and uphold this Constitution that is responsible for the death of so many, for the misery of so many, almost for the fate of the black man. That's how bad it is. So let nobody think it's an idle talk. We got into this discussion straight from 1999 when it was imposed. 23 years is more than enough time. Let nobody tell us that the election is just next door. Because we'll then be asking, election for what purpose? To govern who? With which constitution? So, just to land it somewhere, we have an extraordinary emergency. This union has collapsed. Going to election is like bringing fire to fuel, and the outcome is settled, except we stop the journey before the two make contact. If they do not make contact in the ASU strike that has kept students and young people distressed, they will make contact from the fear we do not have, which is imposed on us only by that constitution that locked down the refining capacity. That's the only thing holding petrol from you. Your constitution locks down the capacity to refine in the exclusive list. There's no other solution to it. And now you are importing. And now your naira is fighting to, they call it subsidy. Subsidy is paying for the inefficiency imposed by that constitution. There's no other solution than to take down that constitution. The security you see is not improving by 1 inch under that constitution, no matter how you wish, no matter how the new president may wish, unless the responsibility and the charge for security comes back to those who are living in that insecurity. If it is to go and recruit more policemen, we see the nonsense contained in all the manifestos. How they are going to recruit more policemen. You leave the tap on. You leave the tap on and you want to go and mop. That's what they are saying. We will only keep saying it until it happens. Whoever survives it will then come back to do what they should have done the first day. We are familiar with the story of Pharaoh and the 10 plagues of Egypt. Simple instruction: let my people go. He refused. Then the plagues came. At the end of the day, what was the solution to the plague? Going back to what should have been done early in the day, but with the casualties all over Egypt. That's where we're headed now. Let us free let us free the constituent components of Nigeria from the bondage imposed by this toxic British experiment of 1914 that has failed on account of clash of civilizations. We cannot be in a union that does not hold human life sacrosanct, because that is what Sharia has imposed on us. Human life is no longer sacrosanct. We cannot be in a union where all men are not considered equal because of feudalism. And so, those are preliminary objections before we now begin to talk about the question of equity that goes with the structure of the federation. And talking about equity, one is surprised that our senior compatriot, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, and the faction of Afenifere that have been professing support for candidate Peter Obi of Labour Party, they are now talking about equity and fair play and justice for whose turn it will be, or it ought to be, to preside over the rape. What about the equity? What about the injustice of the constitutional basis of the union that determines what happens in governance? The one Justice Chukwudifo Oputa described as structural injustice, responsible for all of what is happening to us during the panel hearings about how Nigeria failed, or how Nigeria fared at the time. Structural injustice. That is the injustice that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. That is the inequity that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. All of those who are saying that it is the turn of the East, and that is why they are supporting, that support for justice, that support for equity, that support for fair play should be directed at the source of the problem. The constitutional arrangement of Nigeria is the source of the injustice. The constitutional arrangement of Nigeria is the source of the inequity. If you leave that and begin to talk about the injustice of whose turn it is to preside over the rape, to preside over the criminal enterprise Nigeria has become under that constitution, then it becomes suspect. The motive becomes suspect. All of those who are supporting on account of equity, on the surface, it would have been Uhuru, wonderful. We should have been clapping. But I'm not clapping. I'm shocked that people who have education, exposure, and capacity to think, they have left the tap on, choosing to mop instead. Nobody's deceived. Whatever be the motive, if it is ignorance, very bad. If it is dishonesty, like I suspect, my friend Dele Farotimi, you know what the problem is. But it's now more convenient to support equity of who comes to take their turn, while the tap is running, dispensing injustice on a structural basis. These things that are being said now will stand in testimony, will stand in evidence when the blood flow begins, when the body count begins. Let us stop this deception and go and face this problem. Otherwise, it will not spare any. We have seen it before. We'll stop here. Thank you.